Premier started his week with an apology on behalf of the province and a $40 million settlement to residential school survivors. Scott Moe also made a surprise visit to a community ravaged by wildfire. And the opposition is criticizing the government for the makeup of the Saskatchewan Health Authority's leadership. With their thoughts and analysis, we're joined by our political panel. Murray Mandryk is a political columnist, and we're also joined by Jeremy Symes, who covers the legislature for the Canadian Press. Hello to you both.
Good morning.
So, Jeremy, Premier Moe was in Île-à-la-Crosse making an apology to residential school survivors on Monday. What did he have to say, and what was the reaction?
Yeah, so this is for this residential school with historical abuse and trauma there in Île-à-Crosse. Like you mentioned, he announced it's a $40 million agreement that the province is agreeing to pay to former students. And he says, residential schools are a shameful mark on Canada's history. He's causing intergenerational trauma. And he says they were also a mistake and should have not existed. And that Saskatchewan, Indigenous people, First Nations, we all need to work together for a brighter future for everybody's kids. Just a bit of background on the school. It opened in the 1820s and then it burned down in the 1970s. And then in 2022, a group of these former students sued the province and the federal government for breaching their legal duties of care. Now, the reaction, we had former students in Île-à-Crosse talking at this announcement, and they were quite positive. They said, this is a step in the right direction. It'll get this community back onto this journey of healing, or just another path towards that. I think it's also important to note that Ottawa has also, it's a $27 million settlement for Île-à-Crosse, and it's also a $10 million for the community to do community healing initiatives and whatnot. And this claims process, so for these former students, that'll all be handled by the court, and Moe says he's hoping it'll be done quickly for them.
In Murray, the community and residential school survivors have called for an apology and compensation. The schools were not part of the federal government's settlement agreements because it predated the establishment of residential schools. For some background for folks. So what's the significance of the Premier and the province doing this?
It's so important for the Premier of Saskatchewan to be doing this. It's so important for any Conservative leader to be doing this. You may recall that it was actually Stephen Harper, the Conservative Prime Minister, that started this process. And a lot of people thought the process would end there as soon as we have the apology that we could move forward, etc. We went through the Truth and Reconciliation process where we learned rather quickly. The issue here is the continued understanding of our history. We've taken 10,000 little back steps on this particular issue related to John A. Macdonald's statue and Conservatives saying, well, we can't have that torn down by the woke people. We've had all the issues related to the residential school student grave sites that may or may not have contained actual bodies of people or kids, but have been misinterpreted, sometimes deliberately by lobby groups to basically discredit the whole residential school process, and that's still going on today. In my long-winded way, this is why it's so important for Scott Moe, as a Conservative politician, to come forward and say things like this that are important, why it's important to have Orange Shirt Day. You may have noticed it in BC. We had an aide to the Conservative leader in that province on Orange Shirt Day basically talk about Kamloops being a farce and this being history, and being appalled that she was actually fired for saying this. Of course you should be fired for this. And of course a Conservative leader should be firing you for misinformation and basically saying things that were just out and out racist. But we don't do this often enough. We don't reinforce the message, and we're not reinforcing it to people that need to hear it. It probably doesn't do a hell of a lot of good for me as another journalist saying the same thing over and over again about the importance of residential schools and learning our lessons of history. But it's exceedingly important for Scott Moe to do this, and for that reason I give him credit.
And Scott Moe was also made a surprise trip to another part of the province. He went to Denair Beach. It's a community devastated by wildfire.
Yeah, I mean, calling it a surprise visit is accurate just because the village councillors there, they were surprised to see him. They weren't expecting Premier Moe to show up, although they are happy that he did. There are still a lot of people in Daenerre Beach that are angry about how the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency responded to this fire, water bombers being grounded. They say there was not enough equipment, They say crews were slow to get to the communities. And so Karen Thompson, she's a village councillor, she met Moe, and she said those issues, those lingering issues, were the elephant in the room there, and that people would have liked to have seen him sooner. But at the same time, very appreciative that he did come at this time. At this meeting, Thompson and Moe and the councillors, they talked about possible financial supports for the community. They're going to be low on tax revenues and utility revenues because there's going to be a lesser of a tax base there. They talked about fire smarting the community as well, building fire breaks for the future, just to prevent maybe future wildfires from damaging and devastating the community like we did see. I think it's also important to point out, Moe, while this is his first time there, other cabinet ministers have visited the community in the past and have had constant communication with villagers and council there.
And Murray, there's months ago, the opposition and community members have both been kind of criticizing the premier for not going. There's comments from opposition members saying he was golfing, he's not taking this seriously. As Jeremy pointed out, there were other members of the government there. What's the balance between going to places where there has been a disaster from the premier versus, staying away and giving the community some time?
You're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you go up immediately, you look like you're going up for a photo op. You just do. And there's nothing more appalling than seeing a politician during, say, a flood situation filling sandbags for the cameras and then disappearing. And that's more off-putting than maybe doing it this way, which I think generally was the right way for Scott Moe to go up and not make a political scene about it, not announce it, not have the cameras follow him, and just be there to basically say he was there, but to hear the people. That said, I don't think this is what's really honestly needed. If what I want to see is, I think what we talked about last week. Why are we paying as much for the water bombers? Why were we so ill prepared for the fire season when we knew darn well that there's a good possibility with climate change and everything else going on? This was a reality. Our preparedness was not there this year, and I fear that we're going to encounter the same thing in next year and the years to come, because this is just simply the reality. I think what Scott Moe should have also done, if not at Daenerre Beach, but at some place, saying, yes, we're going to have a thorough review and investigation into all these things that we've talked about in recent weeks, and I'd love to see that. But in terms of going up there and speaking to people, the Premier has to be there at some point. I think he did. He went up there, and that's right. He needs to go to the next step, which is finding out what went wrong and finding ways to fix it.
And Jeremy, the NDP, speaking of the NDP, has criticized the government over the past few days about health clinic closures, ERs being advertised as open when they were closed. And they've spent the last couple of weeks saying the government is, quote, stacking its leadership with political insiders on the SHA. What are they accusing the province of here?
Yeah, for sure. So just on the stacking of the board there, the NDP has pointed out there are board members, chair, vice chair, are Saskatchewan Party donors, and have actually worked on campaigns for Saskatchewan Party candidates in past elections. And so they're taking issue with that, saying, these boards should be stacked with people who are experts in the healthcare system, who aren't just donors and friendly to the Saskatchewan Party. Now, the province says, these are very community-minded people, and they work very hard, and this is just another smear campaign from the NDP.
And Murray, is there anything to this? There's been allegations of board stacking forever.
I'm old enough to get the irony here.
Yes. What do you think?
Well, as I say, the NDP used to do it 18 years ago in government, but that was 18 years ago. And we've created this monster that is the SHA, which means that there is no local independence in relation to health, what used to be health board decisions in terms of hiring. I get the efficiency and the need to streamline the health system. I don't think having a lot of political yes men, and I think in some cases we're seeing that. Some cases they're just people that are doing jobs that you expect them to do, and maybe being significantly overpaid to $200,000 for, in essence, heading a communication role at SHA is not really efficient when basically it's government telling you how to communicate anyway. But that's the problem. We're having too close a relationship between what should be an arm's length service of the people to and government politics itself. We see what's happening in the United States all over with what's happening in the military, what's happening in healthcare in that country when we have partisans expressing their political views in a way in critical areas like this. We need not have the same thing here. We need to learn that that's not going to be the most efficient delivery of services. And there are problems in healthcare. We're hearing daily stories of doctors wondering why there's shortages, why there's closures. Why are we short-staffed, and why are they firing doctors in emergency rooms or not renewing their contracts? Or stories that I'm hearing still in my retired years on a daily basis. We need to basically better understand it and have better analysis that you don't get that from having partisans in key positions. You get partisans basically doing what partisans do. And so from that standpoint, the NDP do have a point.
Murray, Jeremy, thanks so much.